Hi, my name is Alyssa Cedillo. I'm the Clinical Director at Tree of Life Counseling Center, and we are so grateful to have with us today Toni Davis. She is a LPC supervisor and a registered play therapy supervisor, and she has agreed to do Embracing the Body with us, and we are very excited to have her. She runs Sapphire Cove Counseling Services and specializes specifically in body image using a health at every size and approach. We contract and we work with people very specifically. This is not my wheelhouse and not my specialty, which should be for all of us. But we are so excited to have Toni with us to explain to us why this training is important, what this training is about. And I will let you go with it and tell us a little about what we're going to do in October.
So the training, obviously, Gestalt, play therapy, and body image culture. And so it takes an approach to kind of examining body image because it impacts so much of, I would say, like across our culture, no matter what aspect of culture you engage with, because there is separate cultural assumptions of what is an acceptable body. And there's separate cultural assumptions of how you have to look appropriate in different situations. And so because of that, part of the reason I wanted to do body image with play therapy, I hadn't really seen it. I'd seen eating disorder and play therapy, but not body image. And body image is one of the leading factors to the development of an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And many people have a distorted body image without having an eating disorder.
Something and so I learned from you was like, I was really excited that like I always thought about eating disorders. And when people came to me, it was like, well, they have eating disorder and now we treat that. But what I learned from you is like when you look at the impacts, like what happens before we get to an eating disorder, like we're treating people that are already in that space. Like how do we recognize and acknowledge people before they get to the place where it's already eating disorder? And you taught me about disordered eating.
And so there is disordered eating. There's body messages we receive from the time we're a little child. One of the things I always point out in the training is when you go to the grocery store and you go to check out, there's magazines all there. But what eye level are those magazines at? If you're a 5-year-old kid, they're at your eye level, where they're talking about this is how you lose 10 pounds to get your beach body and da 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 da. Or, you know, how their favorite celebrity looks. And so that idealism that we have that I know a lot of times has gotten compared to Barbie in the past, not just Barbie, that idealism happens and we get assumptions about it. And we have a culture that has a large amount of fat phobia, that there is a fear of being fat. There's what's right, there's what's wrong. And you have little kids trying to navigate this who don't really know themselves to begin with, but they're getting all of these messages before then. So then how do you work with that? How do you identify that? How does that even look in the playroom, both as a person and in their play?
Yeah. Something I've always appreciated about you that we like, I don't know if I've ever communicated, but I always appreciate you like body image is a culture. And also, I've always noticed that when you talk about this, it's not just about a culture of like body image, but you also have always recognized the intersectionalities of identities, whether it be gender, whether it be race, whether it be culture, whatever it is. And so I'm wondering, like, did that play any kind of part of when you were creating this training, like how you felt about it?
It did, because I wanted it to be part of the aspect is I recognize my own privilege. I get to be having a privilege of being in a white body, which is a majority in this culture and an oppressive majority as well. But I also have always usually been in a bigger body and in a female body. And so I don't get to identify myself as just one thing. And so our body doesn't get seen as just one thing. And there's so many different aspects that contribute to it, whether it's someone's race, whether it's someone's gender, whether it's their socioeconomic class, whether it's, you know, military backgrounds and things like this, that all end up impacting was all of these things factor. your entire history factors because it's made these habits, it's made these things happen in your mind to create different things to have to be aware of, to challenge. And so having the intersectionality of culture and naming it, because by not naming it, it just ends up as an ignorance within the playroom, because that is a large factor of what has walked into the playroom if you don't address it.
Yeah. I think something we've talked about before is that ignorance in the playroom becomes a situation that creates not only injustice but pain, and can also create situations where, like, when we don't acknowledge and recognize the entire person in the room, then we do a disservice to them.
And it's having a respect for that person. I don't have the lived experience of every culture that I try to identify different aspects of those cultures that can impact body image. And I don't have an experience with every single one of those cultures. I don't get to do like the quantum leap into somebody's body, like the old 90s TV shows that nobody gets referenced to anymore. But I don't get to do that. But I can identify the research of it, and I can identify the respect for it, because by not, then there's things that may be factoring what's happening with my client that I'm not aware of. And that's my own ignorance and not my client, because it's normal to my client. And it's not identified by me because they don't feel anything unusual about what they're doing until it gets recognized that this is not the standard.
This is not okay.
And
I feel like it's appropriate to name it in that we're quite particular at Tree of Life of who works with us and who does things. And so you said, like, I recognize and I acknowledge, and I appreciate the humility, which is necessary at times, right? But I've also seen you step into spaces where you have been where you're like, no, that's not okay. Like, I recognize their privilege, and that doesn't mean that I can't speak up or say something. And so, from what I've seen from what we discussed, it's more than acknowledgement and recognition as therapists, but it's also like really doing the work to put yourself in a position where you can see and feel and identify and acknowledge what someone else is feeling, knowing that, like, you will never be in that place, but they're not having to explain to us or to you what this feels like, what this looks like. And so when I saw, I think I told you this, when I saw the training and I saw how you wrote it, I was like, yeah, that's cool. But then when you talk to me about it, I'm like, this is so much more amazing than what paper and like objectives can tell us. It's so
the academic work doesn't exactly give the real life what it looks like.
Shocking.
You know? But it's that piece that little kids don't know how to advocate for themselves. So if you can't recognize it to be able to do this, how's the little kid gonna know?
Yeah. And I also mean that, like, yes, it's a play therapy, but these little kids become adults, and these kids live in us, are the parts of us, are children. And so whether you're a play therapist or not, this training seems to be geared to what is the nurture, what is the care, what do we need to acknowledge and identify and work at, whether we're adults or whether we're children, so that we don't end up continuing to perpetuate harm.
The not perpetuating harm, and it's also having the play aspect. I feel, I mean, no matter what the age is also beneficial, because I feel, especially since there is I've gotten these messages since I was a little child aspect to it. There is the inner child work, but there's also the aspect of how do you nurture that child? You nurture that child in a childlike way. So you could use play, because that's their language. That's the language of the little kid inside of you that's screaming like, I don't like
this. Help me.
So it's what works for them.
Yeah. Again, very excited and very grateful that you're working with us, that you agreed to work with us. I know a lot of people want you to work with them. Right?
I'm excited.
I seriously know, like, a lot of people want, like, jumping at that bit there. But Toni is located in Temple, Texas. And if you don't attend our this training, you know, life happens, things happen, but I would also highly encourage you to reach out. Whenever I have questions and I'm like, I have ideas and thoughts, but I need to double check with somebody, I call Toni for consultation. And I think that's part of the work that we
Same,
do
same.
is, yeah, we go over, right? So like part of the work that we do is also recognizing that we don't have to be generalists in everything, but that
Mhm.
we know the people that we can go to look for consultation, for direction, to challenge. And Girl has challenged me, right? I've challenged you. Like
Mhm.
going to people that we can be like, hey, is this my own understanding? Is this like what do we need to work on or identify in order to move forward? And I I was so excited to have you with us. I'm like, I'm gonna be in that training too. But it will be on October 4th, and there's an option to be in person with Toni. She's actually going to travel down to San Antonio to just to be with us, and there's option for virtual.
Yep.
I would pay good money to be in person with Toni. But if you can't make it in person, we also have virtual. Is there anything that maybe we didn't cover that you want to include, Toni, or that you're thinking of?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. It'll
Oh,
probably come to me later tonight when I'm just sitting there and be like, I should have said this to Alyssa.
we'll add it in the text. My other question is this: like,
Blurbs
there's a
that
lot of
just come
people
out of your
asking
head.
you. There's a lot of people asking you to work. Like, you know, it's like, why Tree of Life? Out of all the people that have been asking you to work, I know APT has plenty of conferences and training.
Mhm.
Can I ask, like, why you chose us?
I believe in what Tree of Life does. Tree of Life is identifying a culture that needs advocacy and a mindset that needs advocacy within mental health, and taking that and challenging it on a level instead of just saying, oh, I identify it. It's not just I identify it. I identify it and I want to address it. Um, it's not just oh, there's a problem here. It's there's a problem here and we're going to talk about it. And so it is a much more proactive rather than reactive response to things that gives more of a safe feel that this is an embraced and inclusive environment that can be learned and taught to.
Well, that's what we created. And all of y'all are going to have the opportunity, and I would say a blessing, of being to
Mhm.
be in community with Toni. And I'm very excited for you to come down to San Antonio so I can be physically the same space as you. But please look at Tree of Life Counseling Center on our training page and sign up. We are very excited to have you. And I feel like the words that we use sometimes don't convey the depth of the training, but Toni, you did a great job today. And I would not have been able to communicate in the way that you do. So thank you guys for listening to today. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you.